For the business owners, it is an absolutely volatile time, and I know way too many of them who are nervous, and they should be. First of all, I would say look into and take advantage of every possible plan and program that's out there. If you haven't looked into the SBA and the PPP and everything else, there's going to be more coming, and everyone should be investigating, is that something I can get? But on a broader scale, these times always provide opportunities for the motivated, the flexible. One of the things we did was we right away adjusted. I mean, nobody's buying sweatshirts that say RAD Radio right now. That's not a really good use of money if you even have it. So what do people need? What do they want? What can they not get? We partnered up with our guy that runs our maggot mall, we call it, and we started selling masks and gloves and sanitizer. Be nimble. I saw a story today. Subway and Panera are selling groceries now because nobody's buying their sandwiches. Fine. You want to buy some meat? You want to buy some bread? That's what we have to be doing. And I think most importantly, what I tell people that run businesses is, if you're good at it, you got into this and you're doing it because in the end, you believe in yourself. You believe that you're capable of running a company. And maybe you at this point, I know I'm good at it. And so no matter how bad it gets, and I have sleepless nights, and no matter what I think about, no matter the worst case thing I project, I always tell myself, you'll figure it out. You'll be okay. And I think that calming voice inside of you, not somebody else telling it, is so important. And you will be okay. If you've started a business and you've gone through everything it takes to start a business, which all of us who've done it know what a hell it is, and it's not all a dream, and most people aren't driving Corvettes doing it, then you can get through this. And you will if you maintain that attitude and that confidence.
Do you ever sort of wonder how people build a community, build a following, if you will? I mean, I think a lot of people these days are thinking, how do I inspire a group of people to follow me and stay engaged? Well, today, my friends, we are going to solve some of those questions, demystify what are the truths behind building a tremendous community. We've got a guy today who has built really an incredible community, and we're going to discover how. As some of you know, we're building this little bit of an entrepreneurial community here at Haney Biz, but I'm gonna bring on the master of Sacramento when it comes to building a community. I've got Rob Williams. How you doing, Rob?
Excellent, Mark. Great to be here.
So, Rob, you are. What's the name of your show again?
Well, we go by either RAD Radio,
right,
or, which stands for Rob, Anybody, and Dawn. It's always been RAD. The A has changed a few times over the last 20 years, but we refer to it as RAD Radio, or radradio.com is where you can find it.
Okay, so today I'm going to want to talk about like how you built the community, your background, and so on. I also think in this time with the corona crisis and just everything that's changing so fast and all the uncertainty, how do you keep and engage that community when things are so different? And then also what you picture for the future. You know, you are somebody that stays up on current events. You understand what's happening in society. And I think in many ways you're in a perfect position to kind of predict what human behavior might look like down the road. So maybe just as we get started, can we get a little bit of your background and how you began building this community and this entertainment platform?
Well, I mean, if you go all the way back to the background, believe it or not, I actually always wanted to do what I'm doing. Most parents are not proud to hear their kids come to them and say, I want to be a DJ. But when I was growing up, I was a terror as a kid to get up in the morning. Like, I was the screaming brat. I don't know how they didn't throw water on me kid, and that went on all the way through 6th grade. And when I went to junior high, which involved getting on a bus for the first time, because I could walk to elementary school back when we let kids walk to school, they literally got me a clock radio. So this would be, I don't know, mid-'80s.
Yeah.
And they said, it's your job to get up in the morning. And at that point, my parents had instilled in me how important school was. So not getting up, missing the bus, none of those shenanigans were going to be allowed.
Okay.
So I started using this stupid clock radio to wake me up. And in the mid-'80s, San Francisco radio, I grew up in the Bay Area in Pleasanton, the East Bay, was still pretty good, pretty solid. And I started listening to Top 40 radio in the morning. and I realized very quickly that I wanted to wake up. And that took me through the whole school year. And then in the summer, the weirdest thing happened. I started getting up at 6 a.m. in the summertime because I couldn't miss my favorite morning show. And I went,
What
wait,
was that, if you don't mind?
it was John London in the Morning Zoo on 106 KMEL.
Oh, yeah.
And that also almost simultaneously got me through my first paper route. You and I were talking about paper routes earlier.
Right.
Again, back when kids could go out in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. and ride their bikes around and throw papers on people, and you had to get them on the porch.
You
None of this
did.
driveway crap.
No. No tip if you get it on the driveway.
No, and they would tell you because you had to go door to door.
Yes.
Which you want to talk about character building and the business sense of the ask and the collections, which is so intimidating to so many adults even today. But when I realized that somebody had made me want to get up in the middle of summer at 6 a.m., I said, I want to do that for people. And then there was the one catch was I had to make a lot of money. I grew up being obsessed with money. My parents were middle class, paycheck to paycheck. My dad is a professional musician and an educator, not materialistic at all. Nobody knows where I got it, but I was driven by money, and so I had to go out and start researching, can you make money in radio? And you got to remember, this is before Howard Stern or any of that stuff.
Do you think that the fact, so you and I were paper boys at a young age. I don't know if I was as obsessed about money, but we always had money, right? If you were a paper boy, you had more money than the other kids. Do you think that's where it came from, kind of being entrepreneurial as a little kid?
Yeah, because since we were paycheck to paycheck, I got what I needed, not what I wanted. So the reason I got a paper route was because they told me, go make your own money. Now, they thought I was going to go mow lawns, for $5 or whatever, which I did a little bit of that. And I said, wait a minute, I can do this? And I don't remember, but at the time, you made tens of dollars, which is a lot of money then.
Yep.
And so then you can do whatever you want. You can buy all the stuff that you want because your parents are still taking care of what you need. And I think that I learned very early on, money was the gateway to freedom. It's not necessarily the gateway to having beautiful, nice things, although that comes eventually, but it is the gateway to choices, and choices equal freedom. And so that's why it was always an obsession. When I found out that you could make money in radio by being extremely talented and knowing the business side, as opposed to, with no offense to everybody else that does it, just being a DJ, which quite honestly almost anyone can do. Sitting there and saying, hey, here's Leonard Skinner does not take a great amount of skill. But if you can become invaluable, and to fast forward to something you mentioned earlier, especially in this environment where industries like mine are being gutted, if you can be so valuable that they can't fire you. I mean, we all talk about how everybody's replaceable. That's true. But it has some quote marks around it, especially in times when you're building or rebuilding. So once I figured out I could make money in radio, I figured out how to do it, went to a community college in Fremont, California that was radio-centric, and per my father's orders, I moved out while I was 18. It was a week before my 19th birthday, got a full-time job South Lake Tahoe, doing morning radio, which is unheard of. Did that for 2 years, went to Reno for 7, came to Sacramento in 99. That's the very fast-forward version because there's a lot that happened in there in terms of growth, management, learning, and everything, and we've been in Sacramento since 99.
Were you more of a class clown type? Because you guys are funny. I mean, I listened to your show. You were kind enough to bring me onto the show to talk about financial stuff the other day. But were you always funny like that?
Not outwardly. So I was with my family. I would, as a kid, I have two older sisters, 10 and 11 years older. And as early as like 6, 7, 8 years old, after dinner, like 3, 4, 5 nights a week, especially in the summertime, I would put on a show. We would play Family Feud, and I would dress up like Richard Dawson. My sisters and I would be Tony Orlando, and they would be Dawn. These are all very old references.
Well, this is my vintage, so I'm tracking with you. Even though you're younger than me, that's my vintage in terms of music.
But at school, I was much more buttoned up, and I was more focused on learning, and a lot of that had to do with things that were going on in the home. And when my parents, both of whom I love, and I have great relationships now, but I always say the same thing, they were amazing parents, but a terrible couple. And when they separated when I was 15, I instantly came out of my shell. And I went from being this guy who's pretty cool and he knows sports and he's smart to being hysterically funny and smart because I started, that's when I became the smart ass in class. But because I was such a good student, the teachers couldn't keep a straight face. And so that's where it really blossomed.
So do you think it was a coping mechanism at first, and then, wow, I have a skill here?
Yeah. And also I think the stress that was relieved on me personally in my teenage brain of them not being in the same house anymore, it just allowed me to open up. Like that whole coming out of your shell thing, everybody does it for a different reason at a different time if they do, and that's what released me. And once I saw that I could make my peers laugh, not just my family, and because remember, I'm already thinking about doing the radio thing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be able to do this. I am as funny as I think I am.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. You get started. When did you actually get a following? The following that you have now, right? It's special. And I think, and I don't know how you measure that necessarily. I'm sure there's Nielsen ratings and so on, but it's special. People love you. They love your whole team, and it's different than anything I've seen before. It reminds me, there's obviously a few people that are really into politics that have a side to them. You know, we know of like Rush Limbaugh and people like that who have made it here in Sacramento, and they were edgy. So I'm kind of thinking you guys have an edginess about you as well, but it doesn't seem quite so, it's not really as politically driven, is it?
No, not at all. The following and the passion really comes from the emotional connection. We were edgy. When we started building the following in around 97 in Reno, when the show was kind of in its infancy. I've been doing morning radio in some form since 1990, but really starting to form this show was in the mid-90s, and it was edgy. We were doing rock radio, and it was mainly what you'd expect, locker room jokes and things like that, and people like that. But the real connection comes from emotions, and one of the big turning points was 9/11. Which I did on instinct. I was 27-ish, 28-ish years old when 9/11 happened. My math's wrong. 29. And for that to be happening live while we're on the radio.
Yeah, that was the morning.
It was. Yeah, it was like it started 5:48,
Yep.
and we started at 5 a.m. Then 5:48, the first tower gets hit, and I'm thinking, what is going on? And by 7 a.m., only because even at 29 I was a news dork, I was thinking Osama bin Laden, somebody nobody had heard of. And that was almost the same time the networks were starting to say, hey, there's this guy. And between that and our ability to report, and also the most important thing was this, taking phone calls and letting people vent and be afraid, which we did not only on 9/11, we did for the next 2 weeks. We were live from 5 a.m. to noon, and most of those days were commercial free. And when you let people call in and do two things. One, just vent and be emotional. And two, answer their questions, and you know the answers, and you're honest. And even if it hurts, you're honest. There's this incredible connection that comes with it. And ever since then, and it was happening a little bit before then, that happens on a regular basis on our show. It doesn't have to be a national tragedy. People are calling in with personal problems and terrible stories, and they need help, but also being able to make people uproariously laugh, especially when they're on their way to a job they might not want to go to, things like that. This is what's built that community that you talk about so much.
Well, you call BS, right? If somebody asks a dumb question, for me, I'm that, I run in that, try to be a little more politically correct, I guess, which is, I hate it when people are like that, but I end up tending to be like that, trying to please everybody. But you call BS. I mean, if somebody's name is Brian, they're going to get a little bit of a jab. I know that's in fun, but then invariably they are. I think I listened to either today's show or yesterday. Somebody named Brian. They did it again. They acted like some dumb comment, and you call them on it, which is kind of like, do you lose a audience member or do you gain 5?
Well, I mean, history or statistics would show us the latter of the two, and I think that. Part of that is just entertainment. Like sometimes I will just make fun of somebody because what I have never stopped doing is I listen as a listener. While I'm doing the show, I'm listening. And one of the most annoying things to hear when you're listening to the radio is an idiot on the phone who is killing the momentum of the show. And so even if it's just because they're nervous, and even if it's just because maybe they're not well prepared or whatever, you can't let them just drone on, because that will make people push the button. And when people are getting ready to push the button and they hear the host come in and go, hey, get to the point, it's jarring to the person, but to everyone else, they're like, thank you. That's what I was thinking.
That's interesting, because I've seen that with the woman, female psychiatrist, Dr.
Laura?
Dr. Laura. She's abrupt, right? I don't know if you would agree with that, but she's, I mean, she's kind of right on for most things, but she's not that likable. You're more on the likable side, though.
I would go with a different female comparison on TV. Judge Judy.
Okay.
Who really kind of cuts through the BS, but then also tells it like it is, and is sort of like, look, it's not about liking me. It's about understanding why I'm saying what I'm saying, and hopefully you agree, but if you don't, we can respectfully disagree. Oh, we can't? Well, then screw you. I mean, that's kind of all encompassed in what Judge Judy does, sort of, right? And I try to do the same thing. Now, the important thing with what we do and with what's going on right now with COVID is you got to be right. And if you're wrong, you've got to admit it. And you've got to be well-researched, and you've got to say things that you can back up. And if you're saying an opinion, you got to make sure they understand the difference between that and presenting facts, and you've got to beware of hyperbole. And I think that's where the credibility thing comes in. I think that's a lot of the passion, too, and people are flocking back to us. I mean, our ratings have been solidly fantastic for 20 years, but we are seeing them flock back during this time because they know I can go to this show and I can get information that I can trust.
Interesting. So you've got a team, which is, I think this team's been with you for a while, right? You've got Dawn and Brandon, and I know there are other team members. How integral are they in the audience draw in the community?
Well, it's funny. Dawn and I have worked together for almost the entire time. I hired her as a part-timer in Lake Tahoe like 6 months into my career. Because I was in management very quickly after I got to Lake Tahoe. She joined the show in 1998. So she and I have been doing show for 20 years. Brandon used to listen to the show. He's about 15 years younger than me. And he's been with the show for 15 years. And one of the jokes that we make, I can't get people to leave my company. My producer, Nick, who was my producer in 2002, is still on my payroll. He lives in the Bay Area and has for the last 10 years. He does production work for us and things like that. The whole team is crucial to the success, and each one of the figures on the air. We've had as many as 7 people on the air on a regular basis to as few as 3, as we do now. And we all have to complete a puzzle. Dawn is always the heart of the show, the more sensitive, although she has an edge to her. Then you got to have somebody who's more the news, the facts, the topics. That's me. Sports as well. I carry that. Brandon is much more artsy, music. Also very into what we call on the show mumbo jumbo, the ethereal stuff, paranormals. And he's a very deep guy. And so between all of that, we present a full picture, and the show needs all 3 to work. While right now I'm carrying more of the load because of the COVID thing, you need all 3 elements in there all the time. They're vital, and it's so much fun. And that's the most important thing. We have so much fun doing it.
Do you think, if you were advising somebody on how to build an audience, do you think that edginess, or I'll call it partisanship, right? I'm not saying it's political, but you kind of take an angle on things. Do you think that's would you advise that to other people? Like, if you want to really build a following, you'd rather than being the milquetoast trying to please everybody, pick an angle, and even if a decent percentage of the people may say that's too edgy for me, others love you for it.
I think, well, when you say partisan, though, it to me indicates that you're like, you used the name earlier, Rush Limbaugh. Like, you're deciding you're going to be conservative all the time.
And I didn't mean it like that. I meant more opinionated on one side of an issue or another.
Oh, I think if you mean take a position on every subject.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yes.
People are thirsty for that. And I think you see that in the election of Donald Trump. I think that no matter what you think of him, that you cannot deny that one of the things that the people that voted for him love, and the reason he said during the campaign he could go out on Madison Avenue and shoot people and they still would vote for him, is because they believe he is telling them what he really thinks, even if it's weird sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that there's such a lack of that, and you brought up political correctness, and that doesn't help. So, and I think that if people can listen to you and say, I don't agree with them, but I respect them, that's a way to carry an audience.
Do you think Bernie Sanders has some of that as well?
Yeah.
Right? Because he has a strong following, and I might feel the opposite on most views that he has, but there are people that believe that way. I mean, they love him.
And I have never met anyone intelligent or otherwise, who claims for a second that Bernie doesn't believe everything he says.
Yeah.
He absolutely does. Whereas 95% of all politicians, I don't think you can say that about. I don't think you can passionately know for sure everything that Barack Obama, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, on and on really believed, because you really thought, using your term, the milk toast, well, I'm going to try and and I think people are tired of that.
Yeah.
And I think they get it in the workplace. I think they get it from their bosses. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people get it at home, and we're just tired of it.
Well, you're an employer, and so we got taught, I think, that by the law, you better be politically correct. And I know you don't have to be, but right, there's the regulatory environment is such that you're sort of afraid of getting yourself sued, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, our community is entrepreneurs by nature on average, and it's right. You don't want to end up in the hot seat because of an edgier comment.
I would be terrified doing almost anything else, because I have a bubble, in the sense that we do a show for entertainment, and part of the entertainment of the show is everything that you would get sued for if it was a workplace, right? Sexual harassment, gender bias, all of those things. Safe spaces, please. So when we're not on the air, well, the environment of the building is the same. I couldn't imagine how I would translate that into a regular workplace. But something you mentioned when you were on our show last week that's so important too, though, about being a boss and what you're talking about, is candor, especially right now. The ability and the necessity as a leader to communicate with your people what is going on with your company, with your industry, the finances, the future, the challenges of this COVID thing and everything else. I hear horror stories every day from people that say, our bosses won't tell us anything, we don't know what's going on, and I can't imagine how you can run a company like that and build any sort of trust.
How are you doing it with your people? So you're an employer as well, and so you are facing, you're facing maybe multiple challenges on multiple fronts, right? We know the media industry is changing, so you've got to adjust. And then right now in this economy, I have to imagine people are careful about how they advertise, right?
Oh yeah, no, advertisers are I don't want to say falling by the wayside, but industry-wide they are. We've been fortunate to keep a lot of ours because of those relationships that we've built up. But one of the companies we partner with, we're broadcast in Sacramento on 98 Rock. That's owned by Entercom, the second largest radio broadcasting company behind iHeart. Just last week, it's a very public story. Anybody can look it up. There was a bloodbath. They cut about 33% of their entire staff across the nation. They did 10 to 20% salary cuts across the board. As a partner, they asked me to participate on a certain level, which I agreed to. Can't get into the specifics for confidentiality reasons, but under the guise of we got to save the industry to remain partners, there's all sorts of challenges. So how do I handle that? I've been telling and I've got about a crew of about 12 people total. 5 or 6 that are in the building at any time, and then another half dozen around different parts of the country that are all part of the team. They get emails at least twice a week from me, explaining point blank everything that's going on, worst case, best case scenario, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. They knew the minute that I made various agreements with partners to cut revenue or whatever we're going to do, because if I don't understand how. Let's pretend I wasn't doing any of that. And maybe I'm doing it because I'm a control freak, or maybe I'm doing it because I want to protect them because I think they're children and they can't handle it. So what happens if the worst case scenario comes through and I have to call them in next month and say, hey, guess what, guys? If we all want to keep doing this, everybody's got to take a 25% pay cut. How do you just hit somebody with that?
Yeah.
How do you not prepare them and let them know this could happen? I don't think it will be. And also give them the chance to start cutting back and going, well, it's not as simple as we're going to work every day and we're the number one radio show, so everything's fine. The reality is maybe it won't be.
Right. Yeah. These are tough conversations too. So you weathered 2008 as well, financial crisis. Did that affect you the way this is? How much different? Yeah.
Very different. Although 2008 very dramatically affected the radio industry. But the difference with 2008 was it was short-lived. It was immediate, at least for the radio industry. It was immediate, it was harsh, and it was that big economic drop. But there was enough opportunity for other advertisers to come in, and we didn't have to project months out like we don't know when the money's going to come back. This is not only has it just fallen off the map, because why would anyone advertise if they're closed? So the only people that are advertising are the few companies that are in business. And truth of the matter is, most of the companies that are doing well right now don't need to advertise.
Right.
We all know where our favorite grocery store is and where the restaurants are that are delivering and stuff. And what we don't know now is the actual effect of the devastation of this economic meltdown. We knew the industries that were affected for the most part in '08. A little bit of the trickle down of people losing their homes, but losing their jobs, not so much. What are we just today? I don't know if you tell people the day that we're filming this or recording this. What are we at now? 16 million unemployed in 3 weeks.
Yeah, they just announced the unemployment rate this morning, right? And this will air, I think, in a week or so. So this is going to be old news by then. But
so what is it? So we're here on I think it's April 9th today. So that means last week 6.6 million on top of the 6.6 million. How many have filed for unemployment this week? When this is all done, what are we talking? 30, 50 million, 60 million? I heard today was a potential job loss number. How in the world do you plan for that looking forward? The truth is you don't. You guess, and this idea of we're going to have this resurgence, the economy's going to reopen as though we're cutting a ribbon and everybody's going to go back out, to me, that's farcical. I think it's happy talk. I understand why people are trying to talk up the economy. That makes sense. But in reality, with all the social distancing and everything we don't know, I don't see people flooding back to movie theaters, restaurants, and ballparks in May. That's just not going to happen.
All right, well, let's do this. Since you have such a... I guess a pulse. Well, let me back up a second. Your audience, as we were talking about it, some of these followers, the maggots, right? They call it. Okay, I got to get at. How did you come up with the term? Who came up with that? Maggot.
It was a live on-air moment, like 5-ish, maybe 7-ish years ago. It was just a day of horrible calls, and I started referring to people that were calling in. I started referring to it as the maggot line, and. It kind of stuck for a couple days, and then we stopped using it, and the callers and the emailers embraced it. They were like, "No, we want to be maggots. I'm a maggot," and
they're proud to be different.
It was a totally accidental thing that has now become a benchmark and a staple. That yes, you're a maggot if you listen to the show.
Okay, so who are the maggots? We know that some of them are commuting through this crisis. They're still working. They're essential workers and people who are punching the clock for a lot of it. Is that the majority of the audience, or because I know they're small business people?
Oh yeah, no. The audience is ridiculous, and in fact, when we do events, if we're ever allowed to do events again, one thing that I tell anybody or everybody that's even curious, whether they're just curious or whether they want to advertise with us or something, come to an event. We'll put on a cocktail contest with one of our major sponsors, Tahoe Blue Vodka, and we'll bring in 400 people, and you will see in that 400-person room the 18 to 24-year-olds that are there to get drunk and are starstruck at their morning show that they grew up listening to with their dads. Oh, and their dads are there too, on the other side of the bar.
Interesting.
And you will see people in suits and ties and snowboarders and emos and everything. There is we have so we are number one, 18 to 54 men and women, which you don't get any more diverse than that. We have multi-generational listeners. The averages are a little tough, they're weird. The average listener is making $100,000 a year and is high school or more educated. But if you listen to the show, you'd be like, you got a bunch of morons calling. And I always say, well, that's because the people that are working don't have time to call.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's an interesting cross-section. So so you have the age range is broad, obviously all the sexes. Any other? Is there a group of people who don't listen who would be like, well, that's not for me?
Oh yeah.
Who would be that? Like maybe the ultra stiff people?
If I was going to use a term of the decade, the snowflakes.
Oh.
People that are easily offended cannot listen to our show.
Okay.
To this day, after 20 years, there is not a quarter that goes by where we aren't threatened with some form of boycott or advertiser.
So people who are super uptight about, always looking to blame somebody for something.
And you wouldn't believe you would because you pay attention. Some of the stuff that they complain about are like things like, are you kidding me? We've been doing that for years. Like, I think, honest to God, I think that it was last year, a woman was scanning the dial and she was so offended that I called Dawn a bitch. And I thought, okay. I mean, first of all, we don't do that all the time, but
Right.
That's not the first time that's ever been said. And it was said not in anger, but in jest, but just the fact the word was used. In the age of Me Too, this woman wanted to shut us down. It was like, I mean, I'm just rubbing my temples thinking about it.
Well, there's some words you can't say on a radio show, and I know you have like a cough button or something like that. Like I think someone either today or yesterday, I think dropped an F-bomb or something on the show, and you had to cut it. I think they did.
I think Monday. Well,
maybe it was Monday.
A couple days
the days
ago,
are running together.
Sorry, my attorney was on. One of my attorneys was on. A family law attorney who's also a friend of mine was telling a story, and she said the F word.
Yeah, that was it. Yes, that's what I heard.
Can't do that. I had to hit the button and tell
That's the one I was listening to. I was enthralled by that conversation. It was around the number of divorces that are occurring, and they're stacking up because the courts are closed and stuff. I thought, that's an interesting subject. All right, well, let's talk about your knowledge or your insight into human behavior, because that's an interesting one. We're in this crisis. It's maybe escalating a lot of things that were kind of going slow, and if you don't get along, it's going to escalate the separation or the divorce. What other things do you feel like are changing really rapidly right now? And when we come out on the other side, it's just going to be different.
I am fascinated to know the answer to that. Again, just today, who knows how newsworthy it'll be when people listen, Dr. Fauci is literally floating the idea we'll never shake hands again, which to me is so weird, if not ridiculous. And I think one of the things that's happening is a lot of us are really wondering how much of the data we're being given is accurate, and when will we find out how accurate it was? And was what looks like it's going to be the successful push down or restraint of these horrible death numbers that we were hearing, was that a result of social distancing? Was it a result of terrible models? Was it nothing more than a result, this is the United States of America, and we have the best healthcare on the planet, and maybe we could have weathered this in a different way? And I don't think we're going to know that, but to your question, what I've noticed in this society in the last 10, 20 years, but really last 10 years, it doesn't matter. People form their opinions, and those opinions, for the most part, stick. One of the things I love doing is I love to dispel long-standing urban legends. One of my favorites is to constantly remind people there was never a trench coat mafia. They were not wearing trench coats at Columbine. That never existed. And we weren't even told that until 10 years after Columbine, when the FBI released it and said, that was all made up. Yeah. That was a media thing. We just didn't even have time to tell you. So how is it going to change? I'm fascinated to watch, because first of all, what are they going to say when they, quote, open the country? Are they going to advise still cautious social distancing? And we're even seeing right now, there are rebels who are refusing to wear masks and gloves. I'm one of them. Then there are the really bad ones who are refusing to follow social distancing and are having barbecue parties. That's just ridiculous. And then there's people who are covered in like hazmat suits. Yeah. Well, how are they going to suddenly feel safe? I heard a great analogy today. Even when we open the country, who's going to get on a plane? How many germaphobes have we created or brought out, and will we all have to wear masks on planes all summer if we're even flying? So I unfortunately don't have the crystal ball. It's going to be fascinating to watch, and it is going to change. There are going to be changes. I think anybody who claims that we'll go back to where we were in January of 2020 societally is wrong. I don't know what it'll look like. I don't think we'll be in restaurants at 6 feet apart at tables. First of all, I don't think you can run a restaurant with that few tables. There's going to be some differences, and I'm just not sure exactly what they're going to look like yet.
Well, what about media? Here's an industry that you have been in for several years, and it was already showing signs of change, right, with social media and the way we consume content and so on. That's obviously getting escalated at some point. We're hearing about that with, you talked about Intercom and so on, and iHeart. Do you think do you envision consolidation? Do you envision failures?
One of the interesting things that's happened with the advent of the internet in the last 20 years is radio usage and listening has gone up. Everybody said it was going to kill radio, and it hasn't. People are using radio more. I mean, they're still in your cars. It's still free. And the key to that, of course, is content and entertainment. And I don't know exactly what we're going to see. I think it's very likely you're going to see fewer radio stations. Most markets, most cities have too many radio stations. Sacramento does, Reno does. They have too many stations for the population. To have 25-ish radio stations in Sacramento is at least 10 too many, 10 more than we need and we use. And what they won't be able to function in the new economic model after all this is done. Content is still going to be king. You're going to have to provide something that people can't get on the internet and or somewhere else. But I don't know exactly what's going to happen with like iHeart and Entercom. Entercom bought CBS,
Right.
the radio side, so they don't exist any longer. It's not like radio is just going to go away. I would hope to God it doesn't become federalized or something like that. I think that's a long, long way off because there is still a lot of money to be made in radio. Look, radio as a whole has been, you properly described it, but Entercom was on right before this COVID thing. They were still digging their way out of the debt of buying CBS. They were on the cusp of exploding. I mean, I saw what they were doing internally in their markets and what they were doing with sales and events. And I mean, thank God I sold their stock because I was in it because I saw what they were doing and they were ready, I thought, by 2021 to explode. So there is still something to be done in this industry. Somebody's going to have to figure it out with a long vision and a lot of capital.
You think about these events. You do events. I know other people in media. We talked about Mark Tank. We do these events that are fun. We love the events. But it's hard to imagine events being a meaningful part of somebody's media platform for the next at least 18 months.
Well, and I'm trying to figure out. So the common wisdom, which I always steer a little bit away from, but it makes sense to me, is nothing will be anything close to completely normal until we have a vaccine. Until we can say, all right, you're all herd immunized from COVID, and I think we might relax a little bit more then. We'll see again about how all the other behaviors. Then that's about a year away, right? 9 months to a year away. So not only media events, but what about bigger things? We've been talking about this on the air. What about Kings games? What about events at Golden One? Can you put 20,000 people, or do you have to put 10,000 people who are sitting seats apart, and can we make money that way? Well, can Joe Rogan justify coming here in December like he's scheduled to do at Golden One if he has to refund a third of the tickets? And so I don't know. I mean, these events, what do you do?
Yeah.
And when we do events, people want to hug us. And they want to put their arms around us and take pictures.
You bet.
Can we do that?
Especially people who, like yourself, who are really well known, and hey, I want to get my picture taken with Rob, that kind of thing. And so we have a loft at Golden One. So some of this, I've been lucky. I've kind of created.
Where's my invite,
well,
Ben?
yeah, it's all for sure. I need to ride in that vehicle though once we get the social distancing down.
The Corvette comes up.
Okay, so when Rob came over to the office, we've been social distancing for sure. But there were a group of my business partners that were 6 feet away from his vehicle, admiring this red Corvette. Is that brand new? I mean, it looks like you just drove it off the...
Yeah, it's the 2020 Stingray, the C8. My wife and I designed it. Back in October, we took delivery of it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I've been a Corvette guy since the year 2000. I think I'm on my 7th one. Love them. And this car everything is cracked up to be. And it is a showstopper. You can't go anywhere and not be looked at, which is one thing. But to have people admire it like your guys were doing is always fun.
Is that your daily drive? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I've never gotten that. I mean, if it's pouring rain, although I haven't tried out the C8. I mean, most of the Corvettes are, they're like sleds on wheels. They're not a lot of fun in the rain or worse. I don't care about it getting wet or dirty. That's why we have car washes. I don't understand this mentality of not driving your car, especially a car that's that fun. So yeah, I drive the Corvette. The only thing that I can't do with this model, because now it's mid-engine, is I used to at least be able to go to the dry cleaner in all the other Corvettes because you could lay down the clothes in the back. Well, the storage that they've done in the front and the back, there's nowhere. I can barely go to the grocery store, and I can only get 2 or 3 bags. So if it's an errand day, I have to take the SUV, and the Corvette stays home, which means my wife takes a joyride usually.
Okay, so let me ask you a question about this. This is interesting because if you turn on the news over this last couple of days, and who hasn't, they're beginning to talk about the people who are more likely to get the coronavirus, and it's the working people, the people that are out making deliveries and working in warehouses and the workers of America, right? And is that right? Right? I'm not here to really take a side on that, but I can see, I could see some. If I look into the 6 months from now, the idea that people don't think that that's right, right? Where the successful from a financial position white guy is at home working off the laptop, and the real workers are like they're getting infected. They're they're more at risk. Is that right? Is that wrong? I think that debate is probably coming. And so you think about driving a car like yours. It's you would be stereotyped as the guy that the rich white guy type thing.
When we got the car, my wife and I discussed at length how we were going to handle, because the audience knew it was coming. It's part of my life. We talk about our lives. How were we going to handle rolling it out? Because when we got it, we were already in the middle of the coronavirus thing. We weren't quite sheltered in place yet.
You ordered it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's been on order forever.
So we've been talking about it for 6 months. And then I think it was actually the week of the shelter-in-place order is when we got it. And so we already knew what was coming. So the approach we took was basically along the lines of, in this environment, a little bit of levity, a little bit of appreciation for what we have. My wife and I speaking. We just wanted to share this car with you. We have not yet gotten any kickback, at least from our audience, and we do have people that listen and hate us, and make those thoughts known. In terms of, obviously, I don't know yet in terms of like strangers and what they think, and I think there is a place to ask questions like you were just positing of, wait a minute, are all of the C-suite guys at home and quarantined while they're sending out the grunts to do the dirty work and get sick? I think there's a place for that conversation, but I also think there's a place to understand, as we've been saying on the show, commerce has not stopped and commerce can't stop, and we don't need to punish or demean people who have earned their money and have made a good living. And I don't like to get into, and I don't think you do either, the charitable acts. There's a lot of people that do well and do well by others. Not to mention, even if they're not given to charity, providing jobs, creating jobs, all the jobs that you create by extension by creating those jobs. If you want, you want to talk about the pillar of people that thrive because of the RAD show. It's not just those 12 people on my payroll. It's all those small businesses that advertise and do well. What about all the salespeople? What about all? So I get mildly defensive when people go down that road. It's like, what do you mean that I don't? What am I supposed to do with this car?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to donate it to charity? And why is that exactly? That will come. There will be those things, I think, unfortunately, especially...
Might be a little bit more prevalent or exacerbated or a little...
Especially with as bad as I expect the economic disaster to be this summer, when we really get a handle on where everything is.
I agree with you on that entrepreneurs and job creators and then people are helping other small businesses or even larger, medium-sized businesses to grow and thrive. They're doing something very special. Right now, I think the real heroes for the moment, my son, as you know, was in Afghanistan. So at one time, I'm like, that is the hero, a guy fighting in Afghanistan. Today, I feel like these people that are walking into hospitals, having to handle people that are this sick with such a lethal dose or lethal chance of getting killed, chances of getting something really bad. It's scary for their family. It's scary for them. I just gotta, I know you respect those people.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because my wife was in Afghanistan as well, and she's an interrogator, and she now is in law school, but she's doing law school from home. So she and I are living the opposite lives. I get up in the morning, I drive to our studio, so I still have a schedule and a routine. Well, she gets up, she has to do law school from home. She doesn't have a routine. She doesn't have anywhere to go, and she's going stir crazy. And she had a little bit of a meltdown the other night, and she literally said, I wish I was back in Afghanistan, because she had a sense of purpose. She had structure. It was dangerous as hell, and she's not a hyperbolic woman. So to hear this woman who has sat 3 feet across the table from people that want to kill her and everybody from this country say something like that, and while she didn't literally mean it, she did mean it, because we talked about it again afterwards, and we talked again later about it somehow equates to exactly what you're talking about with the doctors and the nurses, and they're probably not even thinking about it. And those that are maybe even more heroic, they're like, I know what I'm walking into, and I'm still going to walk. That's the incredible thing, is they know what they're walking into, this exposure, and they still do it every day. It's incredible.
So she's a dangerous woman, right? She is obviously got this legal background, but she's military trained.
12 years.
Wow. And so who's in charge at home?
It's a mutual partnership. Well, it is. And I will say this. I've always wondered before marrying Christina what it was like to be married, say, to somebody like a psychologist. Being married to an interrogator who is trained in human behavior has been a fascinating 5 years. And I wish she would be wrong just once about that.
Okay, so we'll just take another. I'm taking a lot of your time. You're a busy man because I know you are one of these people that works beyond the hours that you are on the radio. Right? There's all this prep time, all this planning, all this getting up early so the latest in the news. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. But the one idea that you and I probably haven't thrown around yet. On the air, but maybe we've in the back channels, maybe it was a year ago or 6 months ago. So I have this little community of mine. We talked about Mark Tank and investors and small business people and so on. And I've thought that the idea of merging my community over to yours and maybe sharing the two at some point might be kind of fun with having people pitch their stuff on the air to you or you and me or something like that, where you brought your humor to it so that it had the entertainment factor, and maybe we help some small businesses along the way.
I've always loved the idea.
Yeah.
And we have in our audience, we have all sorts of creative people and entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs, and they have no idea how to get started. And I've always thought, since we started talking about this, that we're going to get a lot of dumb ideas, but we're going to get a lot of fun ideas, and there's going to be one or two we're going to go, that is a great idea. And if you start talking about our two mini empires, yours much bigger than mine.
No, I don't think so.
But what we bring on my end is, if you and I were to find an entrepreneur or a product or a service that we both went, yeah, I mean, whatever you bring from your business side and the investing side, imagine bringing this audience. And if we tell this audience, guys, what do you think? And they're all like, we think it's great too. It's a natural win.
I have a few in mind. I won't get into them on the air now because we're spitballing now. You're getting my friends. You're getting a little bit of a taste of the way I like to lead into how we might team. I'm always wanting to team up with people. I guess it's probably something you didn't have. When you don't have talent, you need to team up with people or something so that you
does
can
it alone.
Yeah.
And you're going to get inundated, by the way, with people with their ideas just after they hear this, because everybody that listens to you, whether they are entrepreneurs or not, they know people that want to go, hey, send something to Mark. He and Rob are going to do something.
That'd be cool. Well, I hope we could do something like that one day. But maybe just closing thoughts. So as we sit here. And you said it was the 9th of April? Okay, and it feels like we've been in this coronavirus, I don't want to call it coronavirus hell, but it's like our lives have been changed so much. But as you, any to the entrepreneurial community, my audience a little bit, any words of encouragement, words of advice, just anything you'd like to share with, we'll call it my audience, if you will?
Well, it is ironic that it's April 9th because in California anyways, today is the literal halfway mark if we stay on schedule. We have been sheltered in place for 21 days, and there are 21 days until April 30th. And to think that we are only halfway through this for a lot of people is mind-blowing. Now, hopefully when they hear this, we're going to be closer to only 2 weeks left. But who knows what their state of mind will be, and will we stick to that May 1st date? For the business owners, it is an absolutely volatile time, and I know way too many of them who are nervous, and they should be. First of all, I would say look into and take advantage of every possible plan and program that's out there. If you haven't looked into the SBA and the PPP and everything else, there's going to be more coming, and everyone should be investigating, is that something I can get? But on a broader scale, these times always provide opportunities for the motivated, the flexible. One of the things we did was we right away adjusted. I mean, nobody's buying sweatshirts that say RAD Radio right now. That's not a really good use of money if you even have it. So what do people need? What do they want? What can they not get? We partnered up with our guy that runs our maggot mall, we call it, and we started selling masks and gloves and sanitizer. Be nimble. I saw a story today. Subway and Panera are selling groceries now because nobody's buying their sandwiches. Fine. You want to buy some meat? You want to buy some bread? That's what we have to be doing. And I think most importantly, what I tell people that run businesses is, if you're good at it, you got into this and you're doing it because in the end, you believe in yourself. You believe that you're capable of running a company. And maybe you at this point, I know I'm good at it. And so no matter how bad it gets, and I have sleepless nights, and no matter what I think about, no matter the worst case thing I project, I always tell myself, you'll figure it out. You'll be okay. And I think that calming voice inside of you, not somebody else telling it, is so important. And you will be okay. If you've started a business and you've gone through everything it takes to start a business, which all of us who've done it know what a hell it is, and it's not all a dream, and most people aren't driving Corvettes doing it, then you can get through this. And you will if you maintain that attitude and that confidence.
You will be okay. Rob Williams, RAD Radio, thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for what you do for our entire community, specifically the maggot community. But I think you're, in many ways, someone that our entire community looks up to. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.